What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it looks like it's the end of an era for Nintendo in the courtroom, at least for a few cases that have to do with Joy-Con drift, as it looks like this years-long process now may have a resolution, but we'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony now appointing a CEO to replace Jim Ryan. Well, actually, CEOs is more like it. And then we'll also be talking about Square Enix, who's made some pretty big announcements to investors that is making people wonder, are they actually done with PlayStation? So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members of the channel do get Newswave early. If you'd like to learn more about supporting the channel further, you can click the join button down below this video. And we're gonna start today with Xbox and a new feature that they've actually updated here in their alpha program. You can see this posted up though over on their website. And this is for their Alpha Ring 2406, 240509-2000. Rolls right off the tongue, but the big feature here that people are noticing is the update pre-download. Games that enable support for update pre-download will allow updates to be downloaded days before they are scheduled to release, so you can jump in and start playing right when the update goes live. Now, this sounds hilarious, obviously, because we've talked about preloading games, and yeah, that makes sense. Let's say you pre-order the title, and the files are there, it's just not live yet. Well, you might as well be able to just download what it might not be in a 90 to 100 gigabyte file, so you don't have to wait to do all of that when it goes live. In this case, though, we're now talking about updates doing that, which, I mean, yeah, plenty of updates we've seen go up on their servers well in advance. They just sit there until they go live. It's just we see updates come out all the time that are 30, 40, 50 gigabytes. At one point, I started up Halo Infinite and like an 80 gigabyte download for an update. So this at least makes sense. It just sounds really funny when you think about it. Also, we have a bit of a breakthrough when it comes to Nintendo 64 games being ported to PC. Now, we've talked about decompilation projects that take place where people will go through and reverse engineer the code so that it works better or just outright on something like the PC, or even port it to other systems like the Dreamcast. We've seen that happen with certain Nintendo 64 titles. But in this case, a tool has actually been developed to make this process easier. We can see this posted up. This is over on X. This was from Dario. It says, my friend Wise Guy's been working in secret for a year on a tool to make PC ports of N64 games without complete decompilations. The result doesn't include assets and only requires a ROM to play. He's managed to run games like Banjo-Kazooie, Rocket Robot, and even Superman 64. Why not? Well, there's even a video that showcases this, and it is incredibly impressive stuff. Now, obviously, when you do the decompilation, and at the end of all of that, you can add in features such as ray tracing, widescreen support, 60 FPS. There is some really cool stuff you can do with these older titles and run them natively on your PC. And a tool like this that cuts out a ton of work means that we could see many of these N64 games make the jump to PC like overnight even. It's really, really cool, and I recommend checking out the video to learn more about this because, yes, you too should be able to play Superman 64 widescreen 60 FPS ray tracing right there on your Windows PC. Oh, and it does look like we could actually get that Red Dead Redemption PC port that people have been clamoring for forever. This was actually noticed, we can see posted up over on X is from Tez2, showing what appears to be some of the code from Rockstar's launcher site file. And in there it says, journey across the sprawling expanses of the American West and Mexico and Red Dead Redemption and zombie horror companion Undead Nightmare, now playable on PC. So this seems like something that you could just see Rockstar take to just drop on Twitter, just out of nowhere. Hey, it's available on PC this date, pre-order now, whatever. Or I guess technically they could save it for Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, but nonetheless, seeing code like this appear on their site, I mean, it basically says it right there. It's kind of a matter of when exactly they would be announcing it, because this seems very, very specific for being accidental. So I guess we'll keep our eye out going into what's going to be a season of announcements over the next month or so for Red Dead Redemption on the PC. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and Joy-Con drift that has become infamous throughout this generation. I feel like it was much more prevalent in the first 3 years or so of the Switch, and I haven't seen as many people talk about it recently as then. Let me know though, maybe it's from people switching more and more to the the Pro controller, maybe people going to different third-party controllers or Joy-Con replacements, or maybe I'm missing it. Let me know if people around you, whether it's just in person talking about it or online. Nonetheless, we have had class action lawsuits going on for quite some time, but it seems maybe Nintendo is actually going to be leaving that stuff behind them now. This we can see was posted up over on X from Steven Totillo at GameFile, saying 5 years of efforts to sue Nintendo over Joy-Con drift have all but ended with a whimper. Plaintiffs, the parents and kids, and defendant Nintendo, in the two main class action claims in the US filed in 2019 and 2020, agreed last week to call for their dismissal. It's hard to say why exactly they're calling for the dismissal, other than what I assume to be this is going to be going on for a long time. Like they say parents and kids because different kids were cited in the lawsuits as like different examples and things that were happening there with Joy-Con drift. Nintendo might say, hey, we'll drag this on so long they'll be graduating from college before you get the $20 check in the mail. We've talked about class action lawsuits before, whether it's Sony and like the PlayStation 3 dealt with that at one time and others, and it's like you wait sometimes more than a decade and you get a check in the mail that's like $12 or $13. It really ends up looking like a waste of time when you get that check in the mail and realize how long it had been, to where you may have even forgotten about the whole case. But for this one, it did seem like there was a lot going for the plaintiffs here who were pursuing the Joy-Con drift stuff, because there were so many examples of it. So many people were talking about it. We were breaking down the Joy-Cons themselves and showing some of the faults that were really causing this thing. And I guess they'd have to be able to prove that Nintendo knowingly did this, and maybe that was the hang up there. But yeah, it seems like, at least for now, this is being dismissed, and I guess Nintendo's going to move on from this into the next generation, where we are expecting new Joy-Cons to be introduced, and hopefully Nintendo has something figured out there. I don't necessarily think they're going to go to Hall effect sticks. I would like to believe that we will get there at some point with just Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft, but you can make the case that, hey, these joysticks that they use now are pretty cheap, and they work well enough. They get you past the warranty period until they maybe break down, and then guess what? You gotta buy another controller, and for Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo, that's probably perfectly fine with them. But, I mean, we'll see going into this next generation, as there are still questions around different pieces of functionality on those Joy-Cons, as there seems to be extra buttons on there. Maybe Nintendo is working towards a more full-fledged stick, like what would be on the Xbox or PlayStation controller, or really Steam Deck, if you look at that, where you have a joystick that has like full travel and everything you'd expect from a normal controller. But yeah, I guess at this time, it kind of marks the end of an era for Nintendo, dealing with Joy-Con drift in the courtroom. Next up, let's talk about Sony appointing two new CEOs, I guess co-CEOs, in place of Jim Ryan, who did leave in March about a month and a half ago. And while we do have an interim CEO technically covering Sony, it seemed like they wanted to move on and find replacements for Jim Ryan to get things rolling through the second half of the PlayStation 5 generation, and most likely behind the scenes, starting up what their plans will be for the PlayStation 6. Well, we can see this, though, posted up over on Sony's website with a press release, where they say effective June 1st, 2024, Hideaki Nishino will be appointed CEO of SIE's Platform Business Group, and Herman Hulst will be appointed CEO of SIE's Studio Business Group. Hiroki Totoki, who has been serving as interim CEO of SIE, will serve as chairman of SIE. Okay, so we have two different CEOs now heading SIE, again, Platform Business Group, and then Studio Business Group. Now, they do describe these two different positions, saying in this new capacity as CEO of the Platform Business Group, Nishino will continue to be responsible for technology, product, services, and platform experience. He will also oversee third-party publisher and developer relations and commercial operations, including sales and marketing of hardware, services, and peripherals. So it really appears that Nishino will be more on the side of the hardware, the console itself, PlayStation VR 2, PS Portal, maybe a handheld here in the coming years, but that's more what they're focusing on, as well as they mentioned, third-party stuff that, hey, maybe they go out there and they try to get people to actually make games for the PSVR 2, just a suggestion to throw out there. But because of this, Herman Hulst appears to be helming things even outside of gaming, which we can see this again posted up over on their site describing his position, where they say Holst is currently serving as SVP and head of PlayStation Studios and responsible for developing content across many devices, including PlayStation consoles and PCs, and bringing video game IP to new mediums such as film and television through PlayStation Productions. So what Herman Holst appears to be kind of slotting into here as, again, co-CEO on his side will have to do, yes, with games, but also dealing with like PC ports, getting that set up, even reaching outside of just video games. So you bring a new intellectual property to market like Horizon, which has been very good for Sony, and clearly they are making a big push for that as we hear about a Lego collaboration even coming up that's not going to be Legos, but maybe a video game. But even beyond that, a movie, a series for streaming. There are a lot of other mediums that they're exploring right now with characters and intellectual properties that started in video games. So if you consider that, and then think about how much is going on within SIE, it does make sense that they would sort of split some of the roles up and try to have two different CEOs, as one of the things that Jim Ryan did say as a reason he was kind of stepping back and retiring was just, yes, the travel, but it seemed like he was trying to be in multiple places at once due to that. So maybe this way they can operate more efficiently with two different CEOs covering all of their bases. But either way, this goes into effect June 1st. So we'll see, I guess, what they have planned for us then. But in the meantime, we are expecting some sort of showcase, so maybe we'll see the two of them introduce themselves in these new roles during that event. We'll see in the next couple of weeks. Next up, let's talk about Square Enix making a big-time announcement to investors and really just the entire video game industry, as plans seem to be in place for them to aggressively pursue multi-platform going forward, which obviously with their last two big Final Fantasy releases, they were just PlayStation console exclusives. Sure, they're technically timed exclusives because we should see Final Fantasy 16 go to PC here in the next couple of months, I think. And then also Rebirth will eventually find its way there as well. But we're also talking about consoles across the board. This was shared, we can see over on their investors page as they put out an entire briefing kind of detailing the future, as they have a 3-year reboot plan at this time. And this is page 21, where they mention a shift to a multi-platform strategy. Aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PCs. Build an environment where more customers can enjoy our titles in regards to major franchises and AAA titles, including catalog titles. Devise a platform strategy for SD titles too, that includes not only iOS and Android, but also the possibility of PC launches. Maximize the acquisition of new users when launching a title, that of recurring users after starting management of game operations. So very quickly, Square does this thing where they're calling games HD or SD, and I feel like that is their way of really just talking about this game costs a lot, this game doesn't cost quite as much, right? Here's a big budget AAA game, here's a AA or single A game. So in their mind, the SD titles, they would also try to get them on iOS and Android maybe day one. So think about like Tactics Ogre, where they did that, or you could say Diofield. Sure, they had those multi-platform, but also make sure that they're on mobile devices alongside of that, and PC. See, right now, Square is just trying to cast a wide net because they realize where they are currently with some of these big releases for Final Fantasy, which is a great example. While they seem to do well enough for them, as they did point to them as kind of a bright spot with their recent fiscal year, the thing that you always have to ask when you're a publicly traded company with investors, did it do well enough? It's not like did it do well enough? And I don't think these games that are limited to the PlayStation 5 user base are doing well enough for a third-party company like Square. So yes, going forward, their plan basically is to create fewer games and spend more time on each one and make sure that they have them coming out pretty much across the board on as many platforms as possible. And I don't think that's a bad idea for Square, because there was that quarter where they released like 5 smaller games within an 8-week period. It was ridiculous. And I'm sure each one kind of suffered for that. They didn't give any of them time to breathe or sort of have that release window to themselves. So in this case, yes, I think it makes more sense for them to kind of go this route. People are bringing up the idea that they're leaving Sony. no, they're still going to make their games for PlayStation. They say it right there, but they may not have contracts in place to keep these titles just on PlayStation for consoles or timed exclusivity to then eventually go to PC. And I see a lot of people right now blaming like Sony and the PlayStation 5, like the install size just not being enough for Square. And while I do believe that's true and one of the reasons that they are expanding this way, I want to bring up the possibility, just bring it up, that maybe Sony, when they were approached, because I'm sure they've been approached or at least preliminary talks about the next Final Fantasy, they're looking at this like, no, I think we're good. Like, we don't really need to give you, say, I don't know, $100 million to help fund this thing or send in engineers to get things to the finish line on our PlayStation console. We'll just take 30% of your sales when you do eventually bring the game out, and I think we're good from there. So I just want to throw that out there. While it does appear that Square is, of course, looking outside of Sony and looking towards the future for these big-time releases with the new CEO in place, who is clearly a numbers person first and foremost, doesn't necessarily mean that it was all Square's idea. Maybe Sony pushed back a bit on the idea of these contracts, tried to renegotiate, and Square said, oh, wait, no, we're multi-platform. That's our big idea now. But it's hard not to notice that Nintendo pretty much controls Japan at this point, and that's kind of where Square is sort of losing their grip right now, with Final Fantasy continuing to do worse and worse, pretty much opening every single time since, I don't know, Final Fantasy X. So maybe this would be a good route to have the next big Final Fantasy, that being 17, on the Switch 2 when it eventually launches years and years from now. So we'll see how things go for Square, as currently they're in this 3-year rebuilding phase, and I assume when they come out the other side, they'll be ready to talk big AAA releases across the board on all platforms. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Assassin's Creed Red, as we do have the official name for it, and we now have the time for the first trailer that will debut. We can see this is posted up. This is over on the official Assassin's Creed account, saying Assassin's Creed codename Red becomes Assassin's Creed Shadows. Tune in for the official cinematic world premiere trailer May 15th, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So we will see it tomorrow, noon Eastern, and I'm pretty excited for this one. Now, we also had the release date seemingly leaked a little early. Wario64 grabbed it here. Assassin's Creed Shadows is releasing on November 15th, 2024. It's truly the year of the shadow. This was from the description for the scheduled release of the cinematic trailer, so it is going to make it in this year. And also, surprise, surprise, there's most likely going to be a season pass that apparently will cost $40 with a quest line that'll be tied to it. This was shared over on the Assassin's Creed Reddit, and I don't doubt any of this. That's just kind of Ubisoft and what they do. But I am excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows. I do like the idea that we're finally going to Japan with Assassin's Creed. I do enjoy a lot of my samurai games, and after seeing what we had with Ghost Tsushima and sort of the take on, okay, samurai, ghost, I'm sort of envisioning Assassin's Creed Shadows being similar, but I'm looking forward to this as something that people have been asking for forever now. And while I am curious how they approach this, I did like something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I believe that's the team behind this one. My only hope is that they do end up going back more to like the stealth element of Assassin's Creed, and it being called Assassin's Creed Shadow, I think is a good indication of where we're going to be going with this one. So looking forward to it, and I guess we'll find out more tomorrow when that trailer debuts. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how do you think Hellblade 2 will review on Metacritic? Okay, so the leading consensus is between 85 and 89. That's kind of where I'm sitting. I think this is going to come in at like an 87 or an 88. And I do hope that this does well for Ninja Theory. Like, even if it scores above a 90, I'll be like, okay, great. That's what they were looking for, because this doesn't fit into that live service sector. It's apparently going to be a shorter, quote unquote. It'll be less than 10 hours is what I'm anticipating here for this one. And this would fall more in line with them looking for that prestigious game, kind of as Matt Booty was indicating on that, apparently that town hall meeting that they held. So hoping for Ninja Theory's sake that is the case, because if this comes in below a 79, I think that's going to surprise a lot of us, but also I think it's going to surprise people within Microsoft. And right now, you don't want to be surprising them because we see what they're thinking currently. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Agent, who says, gonna be honest, there are far better options to give remasters to than Breath of the Wild. The original game still holds up fine today. Now, if they released a performance patch for the game on the next Nintendo console, that'd be one thing, but re-releasing the entire game feels completely unnecessary. I'm not buying a remaster of Breath of the Wild. I saw this a lot in the comments. If it's a full-priced game, I'm fine. I mean, we should have backwards compatibility. If I want to play Breath of the Wild, I'll just pop that in and play it as is. No big deal. But maybe in Nintendo's mind, they see the attach rate and, hey, they just push out a free patch and you buy the new system, you'll be able to experience Breath of the Wild in a new way and you can revisit it then. But it's Nintendo, and generally I brace for the worst with that kind of thing, so here's a $70 Breath of the Wild remastered. You can pick it up at your local store and 4K ray tracing the whole thing. I'd like to think that the worst case, it would be a $10 upgrade, but you can't really count Nintendo out, though. It's capitalism, and they'll certainly take advantage of that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Or there's a Joy-Con drift case seemingly being left behind now by Nintendo with it being moved for dismissal. Let me know if you're still experiencing Joy-Con drift or hearing people talking about it. And then also, what about Sony now appointing 2 different CEOs? And what we're seeing with Square Enix, are you now thinking, okay, Final Fantasy 17 is going to release on everything across the board? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.